Well, welcome everybody. We'll do a little bit of introductions real quick. My name is Jeannie Lai. I'm a principal here at Bora. I'm going to turn it over to Corey. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hey, I'm Corey Squire. I'm Sustainability Director at Bora.
And I'm Alicia Borden. I'm an interior designer here at Bora.
Great. Yeah, so we're here to share the story of our office. We moved in 2023, so we've been in here a couple years. Honored to have win an Oregon AIA award. We are also pretty psyched to see if I can turn. We also recently this year won a COTE Top 10 award for the office as well. So we put together a slideshow. We're going to tell you some of the process. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to kind of work on your own offices and things like that, but I think we have a unique story in that we signed on the lease to this office right before the pandemic. So we kind of designed it during the pandemic and kind of moved in right after. So we'll share about sort of a little bit about that. Yeah, and a little bit about Bora in general. So we have about 4 people in our office. This is a group picture we took this year. We do work all across the country. These are the states we've worked in, and we only have this office in Portland. We're kind of rooted here. We do work in sort of the intersection of arts, education, and community. So anything from schools to performing arts centers to libraries and civic spaces. Our values or commitment are really tied to health, climate, and equity. So those are priorities that we use and guide all of our design decisions through all of our projects. We work in architecture, interiors, and experiential graphics, so really kind of multidisciplinary for many years of our work. And more in the last handful of years, we've also been doing our design and community engagement, as well as some sustainability visioning as well. So that's a little bit of intro who Bora is. I thought before I get into the design of the Volta space that we do a little history of Bora too. So these are the places that we've called home. Bora's been in business as an architecture firm since 1958. We started out in Gresham, and we're kind of, that's actually not that many offices for a firm who's been in existence for this long. We for a while were in a house in Northwest, and then for a very long time we were in the downtown area in the Morgan building. And again, this is the sort of Volta space that we moved into in 2023. The space that we were in the Morgan building was actually quite lovely. We were on the 8th floor of that space. What we loved about it was that it had amazing window and daylight access, like so many windows in the perimeter, one of these old buildings. And it also had these little light wells as well. So you can you can have access to window almost in any situation in your desk area, in your workspace. And we loved it about it, but it had this E-shaped plan, and it really kind of separated us. We are team-based, so we divide our staff to focus on projects. And so there was often over the years, we just felt like we were disconnected to, the other teams that are in the office, especially if you're sitting in a different wing than them. So we'd always wanted to, we were always looking for many years. We set out to look for a different space, and we finally found it when we saw this building. We're on 3rd and Market here, industrial, sort of central east side here. It it is an old electrical warehouse building. And through the years, it turned into offices and the like. And so it's lived a few lives. And when we saw it, this was the outside. And then on the inside, it had office sort of acoustical tile ceilings and walls everywhere for offices and things like that. And you can see that from this old photo that, it was like a warehouse. So like only clear story highlighting. And so when we expressed our interest to Killian Pacific, who owns the building, we were able to also design the exterior renovation of the building. And then we leased the top floor. There's 2 floors to this building as well. So as I mentioned, we signed that lease right before the pandemic. And I think, I don't know if you all remember, that was the time we were like, oh, do we even need offices anymore? What do we do? Luckily, we made a decision to really downsize our space because actually we had pretty generous space in the Morgan building. And so we had already made that the idea that we were downsizing space-wise. So that was a smart thing. But we were pretty disconnected, everybody in those days we were having Zoom calls, all staffs. And so the group had the idea to lead some staff engagement and talk about just remote work, how it's going, but also thinking about the future of our workspace together. So we had many of these sessions. I think we spent 6 months really just having once a month kind of all staff sessions where we talked a little bit about the office and what the future might bring. We started with some big questions, we have been in the Morgan building since 1990, so it's quite a long time since we've gotten to a new place. So really thinking about how does the new office, what does it convey about Bora? What do we want it to convey about Bora? Some big questions. We had surveys and the like. And then in these kind of morose sessions, we kind of talked about, we knew that we wanted the space to represent, who we are, what we do, how we approach our work. And so, this question, really thinking about like, how are we approaching, how does our commitments, our values show up in this space? And we talked a lot about that in those early days. We also talked a lot about just unpacking what kind of activities, do we do, right? We're no longer drafting at our desk like the olden days, but now we're on calls, we're, drawing on CAD, we're also still sketching and making models. And so there's just a range of stuff. So we kind of like had some chance to really think through how we like to work and what are our tools and how do we need to accommodate them. Then we got to a proposed program, and one of the things that we really realized was that we were downsizing. So we were making everybody's actual workstation a little bit smaller than in the Morgan building. And in exchange for that, we would actually have more variety within the space. So the idea that there were some specific spaces for an option for myself to kind of step away from my desk. Maybe people are talking on Zoom calls next to me and I need some quiet. I would have an alternate spot to do that, to kind of focus on whatever I'm working on. We were also just having different meeting rooms, little collaboration rooms and amenities and the like. So as we thought about sort of all of those things, one of the key things that we also really wanted was that contiguous studio space for all of our staff to be able to be in one big room together. We wanted to be built-in flexibility and adaptability. I think we wanted that prior to the pandemic, but it actually really sort of made it make some different choices in case we don't need as much kind of this kind of work area. We wanted to be able to change it up without having to rebuild and that sort of thing. So we tested quite a lot of configurations. We really wanted an outdoor space. That was something that we could not get at the Morgan building because there was a roof, but to get to the roof was tougher than you know, we wanted to be, and so we just couldn't figure out how to do that with the landlord. And so in this space we wanted to have some outdoor space. We are we're a big proponent of having really good daylight, and so we thought this was the place that we really wanted to make sure we were showing how we can get great balanced daylight in our work area. Space and variety, I kind of already talked about. And just for a fun fact, you talk about all the things you want, how you can work better, but it's always the snacks and the sparkling water that gets people excited. So there's lots of requests for different things. We moved from downtown to this area, which has a lot less. There's, now there are some food pods and things like that, but just thinking about where people get lunch, what are they doing, that kind of stuff as well, got talked through. So I think kind of just to round out, like, we wanted to design a space that uniquely represented us and our culture. During this time, we also did a little bit of personality test about who Bora is, and we did this little exercise of who's our spirit animal. And so we kind of coalesced around the bee and the octopus, which I still to this day feel like is an amazing, like, I really feel like they represent us quite well. And so really thinking about kind of this blend of these two creatures, thinking about kind of how do we make both and spaces. I think we do that a lot in our architecture. We're both balancing art and, we take a huge research component to our work, so the art and science, and then, analog, digital, practical, aspirational, urban, access to nature at the same time. And then we're always thinking about the people we're designing for and the planet that we are creating, contributing to. So that's a little bit about the background. I'm going to turn it over to Alicia.
So Jeannie kind of set the stage there with um, how we kind of led up to the design process. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we implemented those ideas and some of that engagement with staff. And so when we began the design, we came up with this brief of, this is that interior of the space that we're seeing when there wasn't the ACT and the interior partitions and the ceiling had been sandblasted. And, there's a lot that's really stunning about that initial structure. So our idea was that we're designing an active workshop that reflects our mission and elevates our design culture as a collective, and how that can really support us coming up with more innovative solutions and those kind of more spontaneous conversations. So, celebrating what is there within the building and leaning into that workshop aesthetic, because what we love so much about it was that existing structure and those trusses above. And on the next, so here's kind of a sneak peek of some of the other images we're going to see. This is our design lab. And ultimately, as we were kind of thinking about that, we wanted to have just really simple and thoughtful design interventions to the existing building that prioritize the human experience, but also while serving the broader community. We really want to be rooted in this community and make sure that we're, helping to provide community amenities and help to bring up kind of that next generation of architects and designers as well. On the next slide. So here we're looking at just a simplified plan of the building corn's shell, essentially. And as Jeannie was talking about, that outdoor space was very important to us. So we were able to, on the left of the screen there, you can see that outdoor porch, as we call it. We were able to carve out interior space and make it exterior space. So it was really continuous from the interior of the building. And we knew that that was a huge amenity to the space, and we wanted everyone to have equal access to it. So capitalizing on that view and that connection was really important. You can kind of see on the bottom there, those are small little images, but we, that was plugged up and it had these high clear story windows. And so our idea was that there's this expansive glass that is able to open it. And in addition to that, we wanted the plan to really reflect the structure as we talked about. So if you go to the next slide, here, we loved the aesthetic and the visuals and the warmth that all the wood brought, but then there was also this kind of really rigorous pattern to the structure that was really logical. And we also wanted to work within that so that we were really celebrating it and everything just fit really nicely within it. And we had this clean plan that wasn't fighting what was existing about the building, but was really working in tandem and alongside it. And we'll look at the plan a little bit and how that manifested. But first, we want to talk about also the concept. So we wanted to make sure we were really doing a good design process for our own studio. And we did come up with this concept of kind of the ecotone, which is these areas in nature where two habitats are transitioning from one to another, and they create kind of this intermediate habitat and just that connection and that collaboration and the overlap of it. And thinking about how we work within a space and those interactions, and letting that kind of organic, squishiness really be a driver in how we were thinking about space and the aesthetics as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that image on the right later in the presentation, and some of our design solutions that reflected that. So looking at the plan here, so you can see the right there is like some empty future tenant space, but we really to highlight that view and that connection to the exterior and that openness within the studio space. On the left side of the screen there, you see we have all of this open desking, and that's really connected to those sliding glass doors that we were talking about, and it fits within the main structural bay of the space. And then on the north and the south, that's where we chose to locate all of our enclosed rooms. So there's a little bit of a ceiling change that happens there, so it worked really harmoniously with the existing structure of the space. But then there was some concern about, how are we still maintaining that access to daylight potentially on all three sides. So there's quite a bit of glazing interventions that happened within those enclosed conferencing areas, some areas that we carved out for our design library and our kitchen. So, we still had these spaces that were separated, but there was a lot of visual connection. And then sort of on the right there, you're seeing it's labeled our design lab. So that's really our community space that is separated by kind of some of the more core elements, smaller conference rooms, our server room, and is adjacent to the main entry of our suite. And keep marching along to the next slide here. So now we're seeing a section. So on the far right is that outdoor space that we've carved out. Again, just that outdoor access and fresh air, being able to just open up a window, feel the breeze come in, see the daylight, and in our case, open up some doors was really important to us and our connection to nature and the surrounding neighborhood. And as well as a very adaptable floor plan. So it kind of seems far away and it's hard to connect to the mindset now. But again, we were designing all of this from, in 2021, 2022, when everyone was work from home. And we really didn't know what the future of office spaces meant and what that was going to look like. I think, there was these ideas of, is anyone even going to be in offices anymore? And so we didn't want to create any interventions that really honed us into one sort of work style or would become very expensive to redo in the future if they just weren't making sense, for how technology evolved during that period. And so our choice was to have this open center where all of the space planning interventions really did rely on a lot of fixtures, and most of them were on wheels and adaptable. So in theory, we could reconfigure the studio space pretty easily without having to do a bunch of demo. And additionally, designing for people. So daylight was the other really critical thing that we've touched on a little bit, but one of the most impactful interventions are, we have roof monitors that are all north facing. There were some existing roof monitors within the structure, but they were both north and south facing. So we were able to reorient the ones that were south facing to get that great north light, and also added a few additional roof monitors. I believe Corey is going to talk about the daylighting a little bit more, but just making sure that no matter where you are in the studio, you have that access to daylight. And it's a really great space to be in almost any time of year when it's daytime with all the lights off even. Kind of keep marching along to the next slide here. So another critical invention was, intervention was prioritizing human health and with our material selection and the palette. So this mostly was a TI project, and it felt important to us to make sure that we were also utilizing local materials that were free of hazardous chemicals. And that's an image of our kitchenette space. And so we'll talk about some of those material selection interventions. We have this is a graphic that we use a lot here at Bora. So Bora's chemicals of concern, and these are all things that we are doing our best to avoid within all of our projects. But we took it very seriously for our own office, and so we were really, cross-checking. We're not going to go through all of these, but making sure that there isn't any sneaky PVC backing on a carpet that's sneaking into a project, or that any adhesive that's incorporated, or we even got in the weeds about the cabling and making sure that they didn't have PVC wrappers. There was just a lot of very detailed conversations to make sure that these weren't these hazardous things that really matter for occupant health and environmental health were not sneaking their way into the studio space. And so then, of course, we care a lot about the aesthetics and we want it to look nice. And so, what are these interventions thinking about that open workshop while also thinking about that idea of that transitional space and those connections? How do those manifest in how we detail and select materials for the space? And we wanted things to feel really approachable and not precious. That came up again in the engagement we were doing with staff. Like we wanted it to like that messes could exist in the space and it didn't feel like you were messing it up too much. And everyone loves to see live plants in a space. So how can we integrate them that isn't just a pot on someone's desk, but becomes more of how we're actually organizing the space, and something that everyone gets to really experience. We wanted to embrace utility, but also adaptability. So things can change over time and users have a little bit of control in their space in that way. And then emphasizing points of connection. So that started to show up in some of our details. In how we, thought about kind of the more micro elements of the space as well as the macro ones. And then just really simple patterns and texture. And then there's kind of moments of contrast. A lot of that does come in and kind of some of the fixtures and furnishings. But, not trying to, the life isn't brought up through like painting a bunch of walls a bright color, right? There's the people and kind of the projects within the space that bring that other layer of excitement and texture. And so on the next slide here is just, we really don't have a lot of materials in this space because we had the amazing existing wood ceiling. There was this great concrete that we know we wanted to keep exposed. And so when we were introducing materials to both, limit waste and to be sustainable, but also like it's very economical to do less and just let the building speak for itself. So we had that exposed concrete. And then when we were introducing them, we wanted to make sure that we were utilizing local materials as much as possible. So for most of our like conference room doors, and we incorporated Western hemlock. I think we had started with maybe with some other species and we were able to kind of I hadn't used hemlock before, but it was Western hemlock that was local to us here in the Northwest. And we used just enough carpet. So we thought a lot about acoustics and wanted that carpet underfoot, but not using more than we needed. We have it in our conference rooms, we have it under our desks, but then there's lots of spaces throughout the office where we didn't do hardly anything to the floor and we just let the concrete be exposed. And then domestically sourced AB marine fir plywood. When we first started, I think our first set of drawings incorporated a Baltic birch. And right after we issued those, the war in Ukraine started. And we wanted to think about, not sourcing that Baltic birch and how we could source materials that were local and maybe less polished. But again, that's what we were trying to do is have this more rough space. And so, being okay with the footballs that show up within like an AB marine plywood and letting that imperfection and celebrating the construction of materials be another driving force within the palette. And then also linoleum desktops. So we have a lot of horizontal surfaces in this building that are just desks that we work on all the time. You're interacting with it. And we were able to do a linoleum surface that is natural, self-healing, and really pleasant to interact with and touch as well, which we were really pleased with. And so this all looks like relatively plain, but then incorporated into the overall office, there's a lot more vibrancy that you see with just that as the backdrop. And so here we are looking at that exterior space that we carved out and kind of seeing how less is really more when we're able to, again, have that adaptive reuse mindset that's not trying to like hide what's there about the building, but lean into the features that it has. That diagram on the left is really great because all of the red are our interior partition interventions, but then everything else is what was here already. So we were able to kind of, really reduce our embodied carbon with that approach as well. Keep marching along. So as we talked about, we wanted to make sure there were biophilic elements throughout the space in the studio. We all know that that promotes wellness and can, foster connections to nature. So we had the first ceiling that was already bringing in that wood. We provided a lot of ample daylight. We incorporated plants both within our outdoor porch space as well as our main studio space. And then that image on the right of our front door, and just that we utilize 100% of new wood in the space is FSC certified and sourced from local forest as well. Next slide. So I kind of alluded to this before, but again, returning to that ecotone concept, we have a casework intervention that runs down the center of our main studio space that we lovingly refer to as the zipper. And so this provides a little bit of separation between our two main desking areas, but then also becomes an area to kind of partition off different collaboration zones. And this is all like demountable. So you can take the parts and pieces apart and reconnect them with pretty simple tools. And we did that pretty quickly. I think a couple months after moving in, there was like a day where we came in and reconfigured some things to make sure that we, had the right storage elements in the right places, which was cool to see that happening pretty immediately after we moved in. And this also becomes our main place where we're able to have that plant life intervention. So it's really serving a lot of different purposes. It's providing that active collaboration zone while also providing some visual and physical separation in that very open studio space as well. Next slide. And so, yeah, we've been here 3 years since 2023, and we continue to kind of leverage the flexibility of the space on a day-to-day basis. And I think, right here is a custom like mountable plywood paneling that we developed that wraps around the core that we have these display boards that attach to. And recently, some of our shop committees been working on how to take our larger models to make sure that they're attached and displayed to it as well. So I think that's one thing that's been really exciting to be able to be in this space, is see how we've been evolving, how we use it, and how some of that flexibility, we might not have intended it for a particular purpose, but as occupants inhabit it, they're finding their own ways to utilize it and make it their own. On the next slide. And then last but not least, again, wanting to be rooted in this kind of Southeast industrial area and pulling inspiration from the surrounding environment. So on the left there is actually the parking garage that is underneath us. And there's a lot of great art that wraps the whole space and murals, which is quite vibrant when you go downstairs. And then on the right, there's some images of our conference room numbers. And so before we moved into this space, we actually did a scavenger hunt all around Southeast, and everyone went around and took photos of any lettering that they saw that they thought was interesting. And then our EGD team took all that information and created these custom numbers that were then hand painted by a sign shop on the glass to identify our different conference rooms. You don't know that story unless we tell you, but it became a really nice way to really be rooted in this district specifically and get the broader staff involved in the design of the space and familiar with the neighborhood too. And so this on the right is our design lab. And so this space is very open. We are constantly rearranging it, whether or not it's for a team meeting, somewhere to have lunch, a baby shower, a community event. We've had community art workshops here. We've had art shows. We usually have a rotating gallery on the walls, and it's just very, very flexible. And so again, creating that place for community connection, not only within Bora specifically in the design community, but within the broader Portland community. And it's been really exciting to see this space be occupied in that way, and just how like it is quite industrial, but like it's very flexible, and it can be very like a very warm space as well, which has been fun to uh, utilize as office. I believe from here, I'm gonna pass it over to Corey.
Hey everyone. So I'm gonna follow up Jeannie and Alicia on the project's performance. Um, and just kind of start off by iterating. This is, in our mind, kind of a model high performance project. We wanted it to be like that because it is our office. It demonstrates our vision around what architecture should be like, the space that we wanna be in, and then kind of how architecture performs in the real world. And our vision around sustainability is that um, it's simple, right? We had an existing building. We did minimal interventions that not only exposed the historic trusses that we love to spend time around, but it's also very, very low in embodied carbon, right? We added windows so we had great daylighting, but we didn't add so many that we were going to overheat the space. And the result of our mechanical strategies and our architectural strategies resulted in very, very low energy. So, and as Jeannie mentioned before, this project was recently awarded the COTE Top 10, which is given to one of the 10 kind of highest performing projects each year. So we're really proud of that. And this is how we started. We start all of our projects and Volta included with a goal setting workshop. From a performance standpoint, if you can only do one thing, setting goals is the most important thing, and it's how we start all of our projects. We get the team together. For this project, it was just us, but if it's another project, we include consultants, we include the client, um, we include community members, but we wanted to have a really clear idea of what we wanted to achieve in this project from a performance standpoint to make sure that that tracked the full way. And we came up with three goals out of this workshop. So we can move to the next slide. The first goal was around carbon, and these goals for the project mirror our the goals for the project mirror our kind of vision for architecture in general. Can you all still hear me? I think I froze, but I'll keep talking if others can hear me.
We can hear you.
Can you still hear me or no? You can't even tell. Can I jump to your computer?
Yeah. Do you want to switch?
Yeah, we're gonna have a quick computer switch. Having a technical issue.
Or you can just sit in my spot.
Hey everyone, sorry about that. Computer malfunction. Okay, so our first goal was around carbon, and we call this goal carbon empowerment.
Did you mute your other?
And the idea being that we don't just want to create a high-performing project, but we want to educate and empower our staff to improve the performance over time.
Hey, Corey.
So the way that we did that, if you go to the next slide, is by focusing a lot on feedback and on building controls. And my joke around this is that the the wall switch is one of the most advanced building control systems that we have, right? People receive feedback about how they want the space to be, right? They go into a space, they can turn on the lights. Often they leave the space and turn them on. And by making people aware of the impacts, the energy impacts of their choices and how they operate the building, we were able to in theory, we were able to really drive that performance. And this is instead of having some sort of complicated technology-based system of controls.
Can you hear us, Corey?
Shut down my computer. And just turn off the sound. Sorry, thank you for that. Sorry. All right, 1 second. Jeannie, can you go to the next slide? So we studied the energy performance of our existing building, and then we modeled the performance of Volta kind of before we designed it. In our contract with our landlord, we asked them to agree to offset all of the energy that we would generate up to 100,000 kilowatt hours per year with new solar panels. And that provided a budget that we had to design within. So we did a series of analyses, and what we found is that with our design, we're basically right at that 100,000 kilowatt hour threshold. Now, there's some things that we knew we weren't going to be able to change. The server and the computers use a good chunk of energy, and it's harder to adjust that. But the big opportunity that we saw on the next slide is around the heating load, the cooling load, and the lighting load. And often buildings use a lot more energy for heating, cooling, lighting than necessary because the controls lag, because they're poorly programmed, or because people don't have direct control over their environment. And we thought that we would get to our threshold budget, energy budget, by teaching people how to best operate the space and to provide them with the power and the opportunity to actually use that. So to that end, we have thermostats all over the office. We have windows that you can open and close. People are welcome to open and close windows, to adjust thermostats as they need them, to move spaces as they need them. And what we found is by allowing the users to have control over their whole their environment, we are able to significantly drive down energy use. So goal number 2 is around health. And specifically, we wanted to design a space that we said was a great place to spend a day or a great place to spend a decade, right? And this got to a little bit of the way that Alicia was describing our daylight, our materials, just the outdoor space, just the experience in our space. So you go to the next slide. I usually use kind of the beach as an example. This is a great place to spend a day, but it's not necessarily a great place to spend a decade, right? It's actually a really harsh environment where you'll get sunburn or get sand in your clothes or whatever else. But our office, the next slide, we wanted to create a space that was kind of just as interesting, right? We have views to downtown, we have views to other parts of the city, we have great daylight, but it's really comforting and nourishing over time, right? This gets into the no chemicals within our building. This gets into kind of ergonomic work environment where people have sit-stand desks, or they can move to a couch, or they can go out to the porch. And specifically, we really zeroed in on indoor air quality, knowing that this is one of the driving factors of health within the built environment, but also productivity. And we wanted people to be productive, we wanted them to be creative, and we wanted them to have the oxygen that their brain needed to produce amazing work. So when we did look into programming the systems, and we wanted to make sure that we were fine-tuning everything so that it was comfortable. And again, fine-tuning to a baseline that people can adjust from. You can see the temperature sensors. We have sensors all over our office, so we understand the stuff. The temperature sensors were initially set to be too cold, right? You can see the temperature, indoor temperature hovering around 70 down to about 68 in some places. And what we were able to do is reprogram the temperature and allow people to control it in the way they wanted. That resulted in a warmer office that's both warmer in the winter, but also much warmer in the summer than you would expect. And that kind of allowed us to keep the doors and windows open and not overcooling the space, which is not only what kind of plagues comfort in many office buildings, but also drives energy use. With the same sensoring system, we closely monitor indoor air quality. So this is our CO2 concentration, and you can even see kind of the outline of the CO2 signature of our work week. We have everybody in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we have flex days on Monday, Friday, where we probably have about half of us are in the office and the other half are working from home. And you can actually see that in the profile of the CO2, where right in the middle of this graph, you have a kind of a small peak on Monday, then a higher peak on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a smaller one on Friday, and then very, very low CO2 on the weekends. But the overall peak is a little bit more than 600. This is much, much lower CO2 levels and much, much more fresh air than is code minimum, which would push the office like ours into kind of the 1,000 or 1,200 ppm, CO2 ppm level. While that's acceptable for most buildings, it does not produce the best air quality, and it does not result in the kind of the best mental acuity, which was important to us. And then finally, we had a goal around equity, and we wanted a workspace that was really defined by choice and diversity. So that goes for everything from kind of the variety of workspaces that we have, the lounge in the front, different size conference room for different needs. If you go to the next slide, and really emphasizing that outdoor space, giving people just really wide variety of workspaces to include. Next slide. Equity also was important to us from the perspective of integrating with our community. So as Alicia presented earlier, we have the space, our design lab, that we constantly want people to be in the office. And we don't see our office as kind of this this enclosure separate from the environment, but this is almost kind of the intersection between our work and the community. So a little bit, these are our goals and these are our strategies, and a little bit how that turned out. So I mentioned earlier that we see sustainability as a simple, intentional approach. And that also means that the most sustainable buildings should be relatively inexpensive. We were able to deliver this this renovation for $279 a square foot, which is pretty low given our market. And again, super significant for being one of the highest performing projects that I'm aware of. And a little piece of that, I mean, a big piece of that is our less is more philosophy, right? We took advantage of everything that we had, and the interventions that we did made were very intentional to realize our goals around climate, health, and equity. So looking at energy performance, before the solar was applied to our project, the solar's up and running now, but it took almost 3 years for the solar panels to get through permitting and to be installed and to be able to apply to the energies of our project. But even before that, our EUI was 14.6 as measured EUI, and that's an 83% reduction of a typical building without any solar at all. And if you look at this month by month graph, you can see how the energy use decreased month over month and then kind of year over year. And that is the result of our carbon empowerment strategy. This is people understanding better how to use the building by spending more time here, and then their actions resulting in higher efficiency. These are some of those measures of indoor air quality. We monitor carbon dioxide, VOCs, fine particulate matter, and we are incredibly focused on keeping these measures below the safe limit, right? So you can see like the only time that we have spiking of CO2 is when we have the community in our space, because that's when there's a lot more people breathing than usual. But our particulate matter based on the filtration system is near zero, even during wildfire smoke events. And our VOCs is also in kind of negligible ranges based on the focus on material selection and toxic chemical avoidance that Alicia shared earlier. From an embodied carbon standpoint, we are able to reduce off the benchmark by almost 90%. And that's because we didn't try to change the project that we had. We really celebrated the existing structure. Our interventions were minimal and low intensity. And what we did add, we had to kind of add some seismic reinforcing, which was the most carbon intensive intervention. But the other things that we added were mostly wood and mostly local materials and mostly low carbon strategies. And then skylights. We studied the light of the existing building, and then even looking to the future, we knew that there's a lot directly to our south, which is going to be developed at some point. It has not been developed yet, but we know it's coming. And we designed a daylighting and skylight system that would not be interrupted based on this future development. Part of that was we had some south-facing skylights, which we turned to face north, which provided more even diffuse light, but also future-proofed it from this building that we knew was coming. Here's those solar panels. So because of that, actually you can see where it says Volta, that's the lot where we're going to have that future building at some point. And you can also see those six skylights on the roof, which are all facing north to shield against that. But also because we knew that that building was going to be at some point developed on the south, our landlord who owns the adjacent building offered to put the solar panels for our building on the adjacent building so that they wouldn't be shaded by the future building. So focus on solar, but also kind of future proofing and preparing for what might happen in the future. And what's most important to us is the outcomes.
So we survey our staff annually, and these are some of the numbers we're getting, right? 91% general building satisfaction, 93% satisfaction with their indoor air quality, 98 daylight and views. So we're feeling that not only did we set the right goals early on and apply the right strategies to deliver that, but we have the feedback. We have the energy data, we have the occupancy satisfaction survey to really demonstrate that the goals that we set up, we were able to realize for this project. So with that, we have about 10 minutes left. We'd love to field your questions. Because of a technical issue, Alicia and I are sharing a computer, but we could go back and forth as well.
Let's stop share so I can see people.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to point out that I put the link one more time in the chat before everybody starts putting chat stuff in their questions in the chat about how to get their CV. Okay, everybody can put their questions in the chat now.
I don't see any questions in there, but feel free to just talk out loud as well.
Or just share them. You can
Yeah,
share them
that's
too.
true.
sure. You can just tell us.
But did we have our AIA Portland summer social at that place like a couple years ago? I feel like
We did, yeah. I think right after we first opened in 23, we had a summer social here.
I was gonna say that
It was on our back porch.
back porch looks really familiar to me.
Yeah.
I have a question. If it's okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Naomi.
How did you choose your site?
We had we looked for I think it was a year plus around, and we worked with a real estate person to kind of look at office spaces that were available. We knew this, general size that we needed. And yeah, that's how we found it.
There's a bunch of old warehouses in the city. Some of them have been gobbled up by architects for their own offices, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there are also some still that still exist. So if any of you are developers out there, take a look at our existing building stock because there's some really amazing things that already exist.
We had a couple of criterias, like we wanted to we thought about, oh, what if we build a building, be able to design it as well. That was one of the things that we did look at some sites, but we either wanted an existing adaptive reuse opportunity. So we did look at a lot of warehouses, and then we basically just had those kind of criterias to work with. And we also had a criteria that, like, we didn't want to go in a building that was designed by another architect that's still, I think, still living. We were kind of like, we just had like, if they passed away and it was old, like, that was okay. But if they're so anyway, yeah, we wanted, I mean, this project gave us some opportunity to affect the building, not just the interior space. So that was a plus for us.
There's a
Timely question.
There's
Do you want to address that one?
If you need to expand, would you be able to use the tenant space, or is growth really capped? A very good question, because we actually have grown. And so we're taking that tenant space that was in the gray in the floor plan that Alicia showed you earlier. We are designing an expansion into that space right now.
After that, growth will be more capped.
Yeah.
Yeah, then we'll be capped, because we also worked on an office space for Killian Pacific, who's our landlord. They actually moved in downstairs. I don't know if you could tell from the sections, but there is a space, a small tenant space downstairs, and then there's the garage that's down there. It's pretty small though. So yeah, the building's full once we take over.
And there is a question about whether the garage is open or secure.
It's secure, yeah, and yeah, it's got the garage doors with a key. There is some things we didn't forgot to mention. There's a bike locker room, showers downstairs, some storage and the like, and then we also have a wellness room, lactation room, all user restrooms, those kinds of things. I might have forgotten to mention. Yeah, any other, is the garage, yeah.
I have a question about parking. Is there enough parking for everyone, or is there still have to be park off-site, or how do you choose whether
We
to drive? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a lot of bikers in our office, so a lot of people bike in already. And then for people that drive, you can either park on the street. There's a pretty inexpensive permit, city permit they can get, and so and it's been, I think, fairly easy to find a spot. And then there's the parking lot that Corey was mentioning, right south of us. So that's you have to pay for that, from the building. And so there's that. And then, as far as I know, nobody parks in the garage. Bora has a shared car, so our car is down in the garage, but there's no other cars really down there.
And we don't provide parking as an employee benefit.
Yeah.
So if you do choose to park on the street, or if you wanted to park in the lot next door, you would have to pay for that yourself. But everybody's welcome to use the bike room. And not only do we have showers, but we have a towel service, which I think really makes showering more accessible. I have to take home a wet towel.
Easier, makes it easier.
Makes it a lot easier. So,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of people. We have a lot of people who ride their bike to work, or take
And the bus.
right, or take
I'm
public
a bus rider.
transportation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, being downtown for so many years, it was, really accessible to so many buses at the bus mall there, really close to the office. So that was one thing, but I think a lot of, more people in our office, live on the west side. Sorry, I said that wrong. They live on the east side, so actually, a lot of people also walk to work.
Mhm.
They
Yeah,
either
we're
walk or
pretty
they bike.
centrally located now.
Yeah. I live on the west side, so I'm not one of them.
And trek over the bridge every morning.
Yeah, I have to check in with the bridge every morning.
Someone just asked what happens in the wellness room. So this is really just like a quiet room. I mean, if you have a migraine, you can go in there and kind of, lay down for as long as you need, or if you just need a quiet moment, or you have a really bad client call and don't want anyone to see your emotions. It's just, you can go scream or cry it out. So really anything that you need, there's no reservation system. You just go see if it's occupied and can, take a nap.
There's a nice
Call your mom.
exercise ball that you can sit on
Oh
and
yeah,
bounce
PT
on,
too. If you
right?
have PT exercises, it's the
And
space for
that
that.
we have some like massaging tools.
As a kind of, it's not a couch, but like there's an area where you could lay down if you're not feeling well or stuff like that. It's well used. We'll have you know.
Any other questions? Oh, how did you approach the landlord as a tenant and designer?
Designer. What do you mean exactly by that? Do you mean designing their space downstairs?
You want to answer that, David?
Yeah, no, I couldn't find the unmute. Yeah, I'm just curious as to what came first, the chicken or the egg. I mean, did you find the building and then you thought this could be a great space, but we need to make changes to it? Or what kind of basic contractual agreement was there with the landlord to be a tenant and be able to design and make the building better? I'm assuming you're not part owner of the building.
We're not. It just happens to be, Killian is a developer local. We've known them prior to this. So, so they were interested in, kind of updating the building and leasing the building. So we just happened to be, at the right time.
But I think a note on that, on the process is we originally did the core and shell for the entire building, and that was a
Yeah, we
paid,
did that first.
right, we did that first, and that was kind of the landlord hiring us to do the core and shell, and then we followed that up with the TI of our own space.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And you had a relationship with the landlord beforehand, so there was already a relationship and trust developed.
Yes, they actually had actually they did a design for the exterior with another architect before. But when we came on and was interested in actually leasing this space, they gave us the opportunity to redesign it and yeah,
Wow, that's a real treat.
yes, it is.
Great job.
Oh, thank you. A lactation room. Yeah, we have a lot of I believe our percentage right now we have like 62% women in our office, so we have a lot of use for the lactation room. I think babies come in waves, so sometimes it's really busy and then sometimes it's not as busy, but yeah, it's great. It's really great to have both. I think even in our old office, we had kind of a combo lactation wellness room, and I think this we upgraded to having two separate spaces, and I think everybody's benefiting from that.
Well, we're after 6 and it looks like all the things coming in are now great project and thank yous. So thank you guys so much for coming and presenting. It does look like a wonderful space, and good luck on your current entries that will be going into the Oregon Architecture Awards.
Yeah, so we're working on them hard,
This
the
week, right?
deadline.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's Friday, tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
Not,
It's
not
Friday
tomorrow, Friday.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Not tomorrow.
It's
Tomorrow's
tomorrow
Thursday.
Friday? No. It's only Wednesday.
It's only Wednesday, so Friday. Yeah, we're
I know,
working
right?
hard on them. I'm
Yep.
sure you all are
That's
too.
it.
All
All right,
right.
thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.